Welcome to Faithing Out Loud, a short weekly podcast from Williamson's Chapel United Methodist Church, where we explore how to navigate the things we all face. We're all busy, but everyone has 15 minutes that can help fuel faithfulness. This is Pastor Wes, and I'm joined by my wife, Pastor Tony Ruth.
Hello.
We hope you'll join our ongoing conversation. Today, on this episode, we're thinking about, I think the official title we came up with is how to not say stupid things at funerals.
Yes.
Or what maybe a better, more positive title is how to help people or support people when they are grieving.
Right. And
I feel a little hesitation with the first title about how not to say stupid things. I tend to want to give people the benefit of the doubt sometimes.
Right.
That it's not a reflection of intelligence. It doesn't indicate stupidity necessarily.
Mm-hmm.
But when we're at funerals and the tradition in the South, at least, kind of the whole process for funerals that I grew up with, and it's changing now, but was if somebody died, there would be in the evening a receiving line at the funeral home, and then the funeral would be the next day.
That's how it used to be.
And most people would go to the receiving line because it was after work hours. Mm-hmm. And then the funeral would be probably a smaller group of family and closer friends. And for me, growing up in the church members and things like that. But receiving line, you're kind of just filing through, and the intention is you're supposed to share encouraging thoughts, show support for the family, but often people will try to say what they think are words of comfort, and sometimes they are definitely not words of comfort.
Yes, and Wes and I, we go to a lot of funerals.
Yes,
we've been to 20 something this year in the last year.
Last
which is
12 months, yeah.
Really hard. So I think we wade in it. I think pastors do. Pastors and people that work in funeral homes wade in the funeral waters more than the average person does.
Yes.
And so the average person, it's usually, really think about it. How often are you going to funerals? And certainly until you're older and more people that are getting to an age where they're dying. But certainly before age 50, most people don't go to very many funerals. Right. And so when you're not there very often, it tends to make people nervous. Death makes people nervous.
It's a high anxiety kind of thing.
Right. And so they don't know what to say, and so you're just looking for anything, and we tend to then grasp things that are sometimes unfortunate things to grab hold of. Yeah. Or we say something that we heard somebody say one time, and we think that's going to be comforting. And I think then we just get all flustered and we just sort of, yeah. And then we say something and we go, oh, shouldn't have said that. That was the wrong thing to say, right? Well, the first thing I want to just kind of give us all like a little perspective. For the most part, people, when they're grieving and receiving in a receiving line, they're not going to remember the dumbest of dumb things that you say. Like, they're not going to remember that you asked for a recipe in the line.
Sorry, your mom died. Can you give me her recipe for blah blah blah? Like, they're not likely.
That's a true story, friends.
True story for somebody we know. They're not likely to remember that.
Right. So cut yourself some slack is the first thing I would say. Cut yourself some slack. Everybody struggles in these moments. And because we've had the opportunity, the privilege, the challenge of going to lots of funerals, I think we have something to say. I also think I think the time that we struggle most knowing what to say is when it's not like somebody who's 90 that died. It's when it's like a tragic death, and then we really, really don't know what to say, right? We feel like we have to say something. And my own life experience is that I have heard people legitimately say truly terrible theology to me as it related to my father's death, that, there's just bad theology out there, right?
Right.
So you remember my father died, friends, when I was right before I turned 5. And so 30 years later, probably, I was at a funeral and saw someone who was a friend of my father's and had been at his funeral. And this gentleman walked up to me, and I had just done a funeral for a family member. And this gentleman walks up to me and he says, I really loved your dad. That was great. He could have stopped right there.
Yep.
He said, I really love your dad. And then the next thing he said was, I have never forgotten what the pastor said at the funeral. It was just the most beautiful thing. He said that God was just walking through the garden that day, and he saw your dad, and your dad was just the most beautiful flower in the garden. And so God picked the flower to add to the bouquet of heaven. And I looked at him, and that's what I thought. I was like, And inside, my internal dialogue was, I'm trying to decide what I think about a God who thinks that God needs a flower in his garden more than a child needs their parent. Like I just don't know what that says about God. And so I wanted to say, that's the stupidest thing I've ever heard, and how not comforting is that? That's not what I did.
That's not what you said.
I said, I'm really glad that was comforting to you. And then I moved on.
Yeah.
So I think that's the kind of stuff we're talking about, that people say sometimes at and around funerals and in funeral homes, and sometimes it's from the pulpit, sometimes it's bad theology from the pulpit,
yes.
And sometimes it's just people not knowing what to say. So it's things like, God needed they're just in heaven, they're better off now.
Thankful they're in a better place.
They're thankful they're in a better place. And again, this is all well-meaning, and a lot of times what you're trying to say is, this person was really sick. Mm-hmm. And there was suffering involved. And how I would say that as a pastor is, death is not the worst thing that happens to any of us.
Right.
And that as Christian people, one of the tenets of our faith as Christian people is that death is not the enemy.
Right.
And that we can greet death as a friend. And so that's part of what people are trying to say, but it kind of comes out sometimes in ways we don't think we mean it.
Yeah, and I think one of the things that people feel a need to say something profound, and I go back to your point about that being a kind of a high anxiety situation. And I think just culturally speaking, just for us in 21st century America, we have a deep, almost like instinctual fear of death.
Right.
Like this a fear of anything related to death.
Right. We try to put it off. It's interesting, like think about even like at a cemetery, we put down fake grass over the dirt so we don't have to see the dirt.
Right.
We want to cover it up and make it something that's not, that it isn't what it is, that it's not this earthy, human in the humus kind of sense of that, grounded, earthy thing that's happening to all of us.
Daily thing that happens in our world.
Right.
And so we already go to the visitation. We already go there feeling some sense of anxiety or confusion or not knowing what to say, not knowing how to act. And, for us, for Christians, we won't, I think sometimes we want, again, to provide comfort. And I think what some people wind up doing, a lot of Christians wind up doing, is feeling that they need to somehow speak for God in those moments. Or they need to remind people who are grieving about God's love. And so they'll say things, people will say things, which I've heard people say before. It was just God's will.
Right. It was just God's plan.
It was God's plan. Now, as humans, we're in no position to say that, to make that claim.
Exactly. Better to say God's at work in it.
Somewhere God's at work. Now, okay, so people are listening to say these things, and
right.
I do want us to give maybe some practical advice to people, like
Absolutely.
of what you could say.
That would be better.
That would be potentially more helpful.
Right.
And I don't want to use a phrase. I don't want to say that you have these stock phrases, but really these things that are appropriate to say, and that not only are they appropriate to say, they probably genuinely reflect how we feel and what we want to provide grieving people in that moment. It is perfectly okay when you're going through kind of the receiving line. Now, it's not the night before and then the day after for a lot of folks. Now it's receiving line in the sanctuary before,
right, or in a fellowship hall
after
afterwards.
the service. So, but at any kind of situation where you're going to be talking to a grieving person or a grieving family, it's perfectly appropriate to give a hug and say, "I'm so sorry. I love you."
Right. That should be your go-to.
I'm so sorry, and I love you.
Right.
In that moment, you don't need to provide any theological explanation.
Because there's not one. Because
yeah.
the truth is, in that moment, nothing's going to make, nothing outside of knowing that they are loved and that they are not alone and they're not forgotten and their loved one is not forgotten.
Right.
Is like there's just nothing you can say. And sometimes just saying that, there's nothing I can say that's going to make this better, but I just wanted you to know that I'm here and that I love you.
Yep. And
or I'm here and I'm willing to listen to you anytime you need.
and if you say, "I love you, I'm sorry, and I'm praying for you," make sure you do that.
Exactly. Like, don't say, "I'm here for you," and then never call them again.
That's right.
Right. And they go, "Well, they'll call me if they need me." Have you met grieving people? No, they won't. Like, you got to call them, follow up with that.
And if you, because a lot of us, when we go to funerals, plenty of times we are not necessarily particularly close with every member of that family.
Right.
And so providing or trying to give some theological explanation, it's at best it's shallow. Mm-hmm. It's kind of cliche. If you are close to someone and you're at the funeral of somebody they love, that spiritual theological conversation is much better weeks or months after the fact, not during a visitation line, because you're not going to be able to get any deeper than surface levels, and God is much deeper than surface level.
That's right. And I think, too, not just at the funeral line, but in the days, weeks, months, years after, one of the things that I think I see us people do a lot is we avoid saying the person's name because we don't want to make the person who's lost somebody sad. So we just don't say anything because we're afraid, well, if they're having a good day, I don't want to bring it up and make them think about it again. Well, here's the reality of grief. You're a little bit never not thinking about it.
Right.
Right. Like there's not a day of my life, and my dad's been gone for 45 years this year. There's not a day of my life that I don't think about my father. Right. I mean, and it maybe just in a fleeting way, but there's not a day that it's not something that at least crosses my mind once or twice. And so for someone to say to me, I knew your dad, or what's something you really loved about your dad? That's not going to make me, it's not like you're going to make me think about something I'm not thinking about. And there is joy to be had in remembering not just the day that somebody died, but all the years that they lived. And so I think to say the person's name. So for example, you just had a loss recently of a beloved family connection. So to just say, tell me your favorite memory of Don.
Right.
Right? You say the person's name. It is sacred in my ears when someone says the name Tony Phillips.
Yep.
Like, that means a lot to me. And so I think that's maybe not in the moment of at the actual funeral, but in the days and weeks to come, like, call them up and say on Mother's Day, "Hey, tell me your favorite memory of your mama."
Yeah.
Or on the person's, if you remember that something that person crosses your mind, call up the loved one and say, "I was thinking about your loved one today. And I want to tell you this great story about them." Might it make the person feel tinges of sadness? Certainly. But that's part of the grief process. And tears are not to be always avoided and run away from, I think.
I remember an interview, I think it was on Fresh Air on NPR years ago with Elizabeth Edwards.
Right.
And, John and Elizabeth Edwards tragically lost their son in a car accident when I believe he was 16 or 17. And Terry Gross was talking to Elizabeth Edwards about grieving, and she was making a similar point that it never goes away. And Elizabeth Edwards said, I'll have people who will say things like, I didn't want to bring his name up, and I didn't want to remind you. And she said, one, as if I ever could forget that I had a son named Will.
Yeah.
As if it's never right there at front of my mind that I lost my son. She said, you bringing up you saying his name is not, it's already there. And she said, two, I love when people say Will's name because it reminds me that he was real and that he existed.
Right.
And that I have a son. Not that I had a son, but that I have a son.
And so there's something healing about that.
Yes.
Right? And then to be able to say, I see him in you, or I see him in your children, or I see her in the things that you say and do. Anyway, so here's our best advice. Say, I love you. Say, I'm here for you. Say, your loved one mattered so much to me.
Yep.
And you're good.
Yep.
That's all you got to say. And follow it up later with some word of encouragement or some reminder or some message of love. And give yourself a little bit of grace. It's okay. It's going to be okay. We could say a lot more about that.
Yeah, we could talk for a long time about this, but we're going to wrap it up here.
And we'll keep talking.
Yeah.
Thanks for listening to Faithing Out Loud. Be sure to like and subscribe, and we'll see you next week.